to welcome everyone. This is our third and final session of our Jumpstart success stories, where we feature great CEOs and founders of our portfolio companies. I'm excited to have Seth on today. We scheduled this webinar pretty far out, and it really is incredibly pertinent today, particularly with the rise of coronavirus around the country, because Seth has created an amazing solution to battle hand hygiene within hospitals. He started this company just a few years ago, and I'll let him kind of give the full background on intelligent observation, but he is doing amazing work. Right. Well, Seth, I just gave a quick introduction, but not nearly as good as you can do yourself. So without further ado, would love for you to give us just a quick background on intelligent observation and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you all this morning. This is, I guess, the first experience for me of social distancing, this new term that I think we're all going to become intimately familiar with over the next few weeks, and hopefully not longer than that. But interesting times we're living in for sure. So again, my name is Seth Freedman. I'm the founder and CEO of Intelligent Observation. Intelligent Observation is a Miami, Florida-based company. We have developed a unique hand hygiene monitoring and alert system that is designed to reduce healthcare-acquired infections, specifically in hospitals. For those of you that are on the line that might not be familiar with the term healthcare-acquired infection, I'm sure you're all familiar with COVID-19, but healthcare-acquired infections are a group of infections that are acquired while you're under the care of a hospital that have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with the original reason that you were admitted to that particular facility. And these infections, which are sometimes called nosocomial infections, are a costly, a very, very devastating and extremely prevalent problem in hospitals worldwide. And that's the problem that our particular solution addresses.
Great. And so Seth, just a quick background, obviously you're based in Miami. When did you give everyone listening just kind of perspective on when you started the company and kind of your journey to launching this and what it was like kind of coming up with the solution and identifying exactly what the market opportunity and pain point that you were addressing was?
Yeah, so absolutely. So this has been a 4.5-year journey for our company that it's had quite a few twists and turns on both the technology development side. We've been fortunate enough to be able to work with a number of leading healthcare facilities to pilot various versions of hardware and software over the last 4.5 years. But what we've really tried to do is to focus and zero in on what is the undisputed #1 way to reduce these infections in hospitals, which is, as crazy as it sounds, maybe not so much given recent news and the bombardment about washing your hands from news organizations, but actually the #1 way to reduce healthcare-acquired infections, according to the CDC and the World Health Organization, is getting healthcare workers to actually follow proper hand hygiene compliance guidelines that are established and in place in hospitals today, which is a very simple way of saying if doctors and nurses and patient care techs washed their hands how and when they're supposed to, we could make a dramatic reduction, an estimated 50% reduction in these particular infections. And so we really zeroed in on how do we use technology to manage hand hygiene compliance in a better way in hospitals. And the bar was relatively low for us because literally the tool that hospitals use today to try to manage this problem is a clipboard and a pen, visually observing hospital staff. When we entered the space 4.5 years ago, there were a number of electronic solutions out there, competitive solutions, and we looked at what technology platforms were being used and realized that there was a common denominator to the reason that none of those solutions had gained any real traction, and it involved the specific technology that they were all using. And so we sought to find an alternative technology, and we actually use a technology called near field magnetic induction. It's used commonly in the automotive industry. It's the technology in your little key fob of your car if you have a push button start ignition. And it had never been applied to this particular use case before. And there are all sorts of advantages to using this technology and monitoring hand hygiene in a healthcare setting. But we built this solution around this. So the journey has been, one that in conversations with other entrepreneurs is pretty common. Identify a very painful problem to a large customer, figure out what competitors have tried to do to solve that problem, figure out how you can develop a better solution, better sort of in quotes type of solution. And then the journey begins. And as typical in the healthcare industry, a lot of it is developing a solution, pitching it to a hospital, securing a pilot, learning, and then iterating based on that learning. And again, for us, it was 4 different pilots with 4 different hospital customers and 4 different versions of hardware and software before we were able to reach what we call the commercial version of our product. And that was just completed at the end of 2019.
Yeah, and so Seth, that gives a really good kind of overview for any potential applicants or entrepreneurs listening that, product iteration is not just something that we talk about and kind of do, month to month. This was a 4-year process for you to get to the correct technology and solution that hospitals were looking for. And they maybe talk about that process that, going through a pilot and testing the technology, getting that feedback, reworking it. Tell us a little bit about your experience working through those pilots to get to now a commercially viable product that you have today.
Yeah, I think, pilots in hospitals, specifically from healthcare entrepreneurs, is a bit of a double-edged sword. There's a necessity for entrepreneurial companies to utilize healthcare facilities vis-a-vis pilot or trial programs, whatever you call them, to be able to see how your product works truly outside of the lab environment. And for us, it was a combination of, one, how does the technology work when it's in a hospital environment, which is impossible to replicate in the lab environment. But more importantly, it is, we call it the scalability factor of our solution, which simply means even if the technology works exactly as you want it to work, what is unique about a healthcare environment that would limit the success of your product that might have nothing whatsoever to do with the technology end working? In other words, does it create workflow disruptions for healthcare workers? Does it require them to do things that, although they might seem simple to us, when you actually talk to doctors or nurses about, for example, charging devices or having to re-provision out a device to a healthcare worker every shift, or even every week, or even every month? What do these impediments look like that until you actually put the product into the environment, you have no idea. There's no amount of conversations that you can have with customers until you actually put the product into the environment and get the feedback. So for us, that has been instrumental in shaping not just the technology aspect of our solution, but literally how we go to market. We are a hardware as a solution model based on specific feedback we got during these particular pilots. Really, really important. The sort of double-edged part of the sword is healthcare technology startups have sort of, we've trained our customer base to expect free pilots. And that becomes at some point in your piloting with customers sort of an impediment to becoming a real company, i.e., charging a customer, having them pay you for the solution, and scaling.
Right, exactly. And I think that's something that we try to coach any portfolio company that comes in is, all right, you're now at the point, no more free pilots. If you have a product that, Seth, like you did, kind of that you had iterated on for many years, you had been running multiple free pilots, but now it was time to actually kind of go into, no, you need to pay for this. And then if it does work, here is a clear map to becoming a fully integrated customer.
Yeah, I think, Eller, that's also where Jumpstart actually was extraordinarily beneficial to us. And, you know, I think retrospectively looking back at the last year and the relationship we've had with Jumpstart, we were at the right place at the right time for Jumpstart's program. And for us, it was like pouring gasoline, you know, on a fire. We
Yeah,
were looking for access to.
I was, not to interrupt, but you actually just like poured right into my next question, which was explain to those listening, what was that right place, right time? What did that look like for you all?
Yeah, for us, it was being at a place in our company life stage where we were looking for two things. We were looking for access to customers, which was critical for us, and we were looking for access to capital. Jumpstart was actually the very first outside money. Jumpstart Foundry, the accelerator program, was the very first outside capital our company ever took. We bootstrapped for the first 3.5 years of our life cycle. So it was perfect. It was access to capital, and it was access to customers. And I think that life stage aligning with what an accelerator's true sweet spot is, and different accelerators have different sweet spots. Sometimes it's content, sometimes it's relationships. Matching up to that sweet spot is an important factor, and we're a perfect example that if you do match up, there is truly an opportunity to dramatically accelerate your business.
Right. And so I like to ask this question. It's always funny that I ask it and kind of put you on the spot because it's you're having to potentially talk bad about me. But did you have any hesitations when you were going through the application process or through the selection process with Jumpstart? Were there any hesitations that you had about taking the investment once it was offered? And if so, what were those? And then I always give you the out at the end to say, have they been relieved?
Yeah, so I think there's always a natural bit of apprehension about I'm giving up a certain amount of my company for an unknown. I'm giving up a percentage of equity, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to get in return. For us, there were two occurrences that sort of calmed our fears going through that natural apprehension. One was the actual Jumpstart process, the fact that Jumpstart really dug into our business, really asked some very pointed questions, and I think did a pretty thorough due diligence on us before they invested. And to us, that gave us a level of comfort and confidence. And two, we spent a little time asking other companies that had been through Jumpstart, hey, was it worth the investment? And I can now tell you, having gone through this, and we've actually gone through a second accelerator program, that any company that is concerned about giving up the percentage of equity for what you get, I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one, but we're a perfect example that what we got back and are getting back is many, many fold the bit of equity that we gave up. So yeah, I think there's a natural apprehension. I think that, again, Jumpstart's process, Eller, and I think you specifically, in sort of digging in through not just one phone call, but multiple phone calls in the process before you guys said, yeah, we'd like to include you as a company, was part of what made us feel comfortable.
Well, good. Well, good. And so I know obviously you and I and Vic and the team have worked, over the last year or so, kind of getting you connected in with some strategic partners. So I know that story. For those listening, do you want to kind of paint the picture, give the story of, how intelligent observation has been impacted since we invested?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we really have a pretty amazing story, but I think it's one that is absolutely scalable out there, and it's a perfect example of making the right connections, and how important making the right connections are and what they can do for your business. So when we were accepted into the Jumpstart program and we came for the orientation program, part of that orientation were some sort of, I call them almost speed dating sessions with various contacts that Jumpstart has. Through one of those contacts, which was a high-level contact at HCA in Nashville, we had an email introduction made to the chief epidemiologist and the chief patient safety officer over all 184 HCA hospitals. And as an entrepreneur, I've had lots of introductions made for me, and I'm always extraordinarily diligent about following up on those. And sometimes they just lead nowhere. That's just the nature of introductions. Well, this particular email introduction led to an invitation to come and present and demonstrate our technology at HCA's corporate office very quickly. Within 4 or 5 weeks of starting the Jumpstart program, we were in Nashville at the corporate office actually doing a presentation to the most senior levels at HCA corporate that control epidemiology, patient safety, and infection control. That led to 2 months later having a signed agreement with one HCA hospital in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to pilot our solution. We quickly implemented the solution. We had a 30-day pilot period that expired this past December, which led to the full-scale approval to scale our solution within that HCA hospital. So past the pilot to full paying, full scale, and has now led to much broader introductions into the HCA ecosystem, including HCA's East Florida division, which is in our backyard, which is 14 hospitals in Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Dade County, where we're located. So all of that transpired from the very first introduction to literally 15 hospitals and an entree now into the balance of HCA in 11 months from start to finish. It's a perfect example, and I use the example in conversation with people about, having an introduction to a customer is important, but if it's not the right customer, there's so much time and money that get burned up, and almost this false sense of, hey, we've made a relationship with this great customer, but not being able to take the relationship anywhere. This is a perfect example of the right customer at the right level and how fast you can accelerate if that happens.
Right. And I think it's important to point out to those listening is that was actually really key in our investment selection process. We spent a lot of time, and we still spend a lot of time talking to executives and kind of higher ups within health systems to really understand what their pain points are. We had heard from, specific people within HCA that were saying to us, this is a huge, hand hygiene is a huge problem. We've seen dozens of solutions and none of them work. And here are all the, the restrictions on the different types of solutions that would need to be in place in order for us to actually implement something. And so going back to Seth, what you were saying about us kind of asking the right questions and during our vetting process, what I think attracted us to you is that you were so aware of all of the limitations of other technologies. You were so aware of other competitors in the market, what they were doing and how you were different. And I think you had really identified the market opportunity. And you had a very clear vision for growth. And so that made us incredibly confident in investing in you specifically and the technology behind intelligent observation.
Well, I appreciate that very much. That also, again, goes back to my earlier comments. That's not an overnight, that was 3.5 years of a journey of doing it wrong in some occasions, asking lots of questions, and listening to people tell you that your baby is a little bit ugly and these are the reasons why. and iterating because of that.
Yep, exactly. And so I always like to keep these webinars somewhat short and then open it up to questions, but kind of on that thread, to my last question for you, Seth, is kind of what is the advice that you would give to other entrepreneurs listening as they are in this process of iterating on their own products and technologies, as they are considering applying for Jumpstart for funding, or as they're looking for other sources of strategic capital to build their innovation?
I think the overall advice is that do research, make sure that you're aligning with the organizations that you're looking for support from, whether it's from a capital standpoint to make sure that that values and objectives are aligned, or whether it's from support like from companies or accelerators like Jumpstart. We are a huge fan of accelerators and what they can offer companies. One of the important aspects of these accelerators, though, and it's interesting in talking to lots of cohorts of ours, is that there's a direct relationship from what you get out of an accelerator program like Jumpstart directly correlated to what you put into the program. So it's not you just get signed up and they take you on board and then everything just sort of happens, right? It's a lot of work that happens, but if you're willing to do the work and take advantage of the opportunities, the connections, it can be really amazing. So it's more do homework. There's lots of accelerator programs that have popped up now, but if you find one that's aligned well with your values and with where you are in life stage, absolutely a great opportunity to take advantage of.
Awesome. Well, at this point, I want to open it up to questions. Anyone can submit questions through the Q&A feature here. I have one that just popped right in. Oh, this was someone did their research on you, Seth. So, Seth, were you concerned that Johns Hopkins may replicate your solution during the pilot phase? If so, what did you do to protect your company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually weren't very concerned. So we do have some intellectual property wrapped around our solution, but full disclosure, at the end of the day, we're a software company, and our real secret sauce is software, firmware, and algorithm related, which is impossible basically to patent protect. At the end of the day, if Hopkins or any other customer in our space, and there's been plenty of other large healthcare systems that have tried on their own to develop competitive solutions, none of them have been successful. That fear for us was relatively low. Most hospitals, and even the very progressive, very advanced groups, healthcare systems, they're looking for solutions. They don't want to be in the technology business. And what we do, although I make it sound really simple, and our technology team, when they hear me talk, always pulls me aside after and is like, saying, hey, it's not quite as easy as you explain it. What we do is a little more difficult, and there's a little more work behind it. There's not a great fear on our part about hospital customers stealing your technology. We're also a company that we're very open and honest and have had conversations with, for example, accelerator programs, funding sources. We never ask for a non-disclosure agreement up front. I just personally have found that if you screen the people that you are doing business with, whether it's from a customer standpoint, it's from an investor standpoint, it's from a mentor standpoint, if you screen people first, you get a pretty good feel. Anybody that sort of gives you that inclination of, hey, I might need to ask them for a non-disclosure, that's probably your gut telling you something. So very little fear on our part, really.
Great. Any other questions? Please feel free to submit in the Q&A. All right, well, so far no more questions. So Seth, we'll keep this one short and sweet. I always like to end the webinars though with a quick, what can we expect from you? What amazing, great things can we expect from Intelligent Observation? into 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, so we are very quickly moving from a startup company to a scale-up company, and so with that comes all sorts of really exciting opportunities and all sorts of challenges. But in 2020, we are really making that transformation. So for us, that means a pretty dramatic scale, both from a customer base experience and then from all of the support internally as a company that we need to be able to service those customers in a world-class way. So lots of growth, both from a customer standpoint, a revenue standpoint, but also from a company standpoint, a team standpoint. Lots of great opportunities and lots of amazing things happening in 2020. And then I'd also just offer up, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. If anybody's interested or has any additional questions or wants to ask me anything relative to Jumpstart or our experience, more than happy to talk to you guys, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Seth. And anyone listening, if for some reason you can't find him on LinkedIn, you're welcome to email me directly. Our contact page is easy to find on the website, and it goes directly to my inbox. So feel free to shoot us an email. Happy to connect you with great founders like Seth or others in the portfolio. Thank you for joining this morning. Seth, thank you so much for joining. It was great having you on here.
No, I appreciate it, everybody. Wash your hands and stay safe, for sure.